Welcome to the Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hamill, and this episode is dedicated to just the process of change. I can't wait to dig into it, so here we go. Wow, what an incredible season so far. All of these topics have just been amazing, and how real. Something that we all are facing, change. So what is the process? You've heard some things, you've heard different people's stories of change, so I just wanted to narrow it down. And change literally mirrors a lot of times the 7 stages of grief. So I just wanted to kind of bring those together, that as you are processing change in your life, and this change could be as simple as watching your kids grow up. I don't know about you, but you can see some of my equipment if you're watching it. But every day on my phone, my Time Hop app memories show up, and I see my kids growing up all over again as if it wasn't happening right in front of my eyes. And it's, you can miss them when they're small. I don't miss diapers, but the truth of the matter is, processing change is very similar to the process of grief. Because think about this. Every time you step into a new season of change, there's hope, there's possibility, there's freedom, there's excitement, there's dreaming. But then when it's time to change out of that season, just think about this. That dream, that hope is literally dying, or you're letting go of it, or you're releasing it, and it is a process. Listen, the only person that change seems sudden to is the person who isn't embracing it or isn't the one making the change. So change to all of the outsiders seems so sudden and instantaneous. Like, oh, how are you just making this change? Actually, you've probably been thinking about it for a while. You've been rehearsing it in your mind, navigating conversations in your head, some self-talk. You've been going through some emotions with this change. Like you just, for the most part, unless it's totally emotionally reactionary, nobody just quits their job on the scene. They've rehearsed that in their mind, and there might be a tipping point or a straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. And so you announce that change to someone, and whoa, all of a sudden, out of nowhere to them, but you've probably been thinking about that. Whether it's starting a new relationship, you've probably been thinking about it, fantasizing about it, rehearsing that, right? Or ending a relationship, starting that business, right? Whatever that change is that you're doing, you've been going through the process of that change for some time before it is manifested into reality. So what is the process of change? Again, going through the 7 stages of grief. So you've probably heard some of this before, but I want you to hear it in light of the change that you're going through today, so you can identify where you're at. And here's the thing I want to tell you right now. Change is messy. It's not compartmentalized. So as I talk through some of these things, some of these seasons of change will overlap. It's not just a checkbox where you go one by one by one on to the next thing. Sometimes you're experiencing all of them simultaneously. So the first stage of grief, of change, is shock and denial. Oh, I don't want this to be over. No, I don't want to move away from this house. No, I don't want to step out of that season. No, I don't want this time to end. And I remember when our daughter was ending 6th grade, our youngest daughter specifically, and it was like, wow, we'll never be elementary school parents again. But I didn't want that to end. It was so much fun. There was so many cool things now that it's over. Things like trick-or-treating. Man, has Christmas changed since our kids have gotten older? The excitement of tearing open the wrapping paper, where now literally the only thing my kids want for Christmas is a portrait of Benjamin Franklin. That's a $100 bill reference in case you missed that. But right? Like, oh, I miss those days, and I didn't want that to change. And so there's the shock and the denial of, a new season is coming and a new time is coming, but you don't want the old season to end, the old way of thinking. And it's been true of me for every job, and I can look back to every job I had, and while every job or every season has had its negative things that I didn't like about it, like I loved working at the fast food restaurant when I was a teenager. I loved it. I loved some of the experiences I had working at a big box store. I'm not naming them for copyright reasons because I don't have the money to fend them off if they're suing me. But I worked at some of those places, and it was fun and it was exciting as much as it was also painful. And so the denial of change. Then there's the pain and guilt of change. That it's like a wound where you're going, oh no. There's the guilt of you're leaving those people behind. You're tearing apart those relationships. When you have fun and incredible and valuable and meaningful relationship, but the relationships are anchored in the thing that you're changing. Maybe it's the church you're attending, and you know that when you stop attending that church, it's going to change that relationship that you have, and it's going to be painful, and the memories that you have. Or perhaps it is someone that's passing away, and you're like, life is never going to be the same without this person. Maybe it's that best friend, or whatever the case is. It's how you manage your money. It's a new set of standards in your marriage, right? And you're like, well, I don't want to be guilty because other people aren't on board, and all of this stuff that comes through your mind. And this is a stage. This is a natural stage that you personally have to embrace and you have to go through. You cannot skip this part of the change so that you can fully understand what you're letting go of. And so that your goodbyes could be real, could be authentic, of whatever it is that you're saying goodbye to. Hey, wanted to take a quick break from the podcast to let you know The Life You're Meant to Lead, #1 new release on Amazon, is available both in the ebook, right? Kindle, Audible, where I read it, and the tree version. Make sure you pick it up. It's available anywhere in the world, so you can go to your country's Amazon if you're listening or watching from somewhere else. Pick it up. The Life You're Meant to Lead by Tom Hamill. I remember there was a very emotional season in my life and the life of our family. When our oldest daughter was born, within a span of about 6 months, we got 2 new puppy golden retrievers. Kita and Brutus were our golden retrievers, and these dogs were amazing. Well, Brutus was amazing. Kita was all right. Actually, if you've ever had a golden retriever, they're literally the smartest dogs on the planet. And they did tricks, and our daughters did all kinds of horrible things to these dogs as they were learning to walk. They would pull their hair, and they would try to ride the dogs. And those dogs just loved those girls like nobody's business. But 14 years later, there was a change. Oh, and it was a painful change. What would life be like without these golden retrievers who literally were a part of our family? They were like our kids. They traveled across the country as we moved from Louisiana to California in our minivan and all kinds of things. We had so many memories, and now the pain of this change was real and raw and emotional. The guilt of the change as you're moving into a new season and a new phase of life, but other people aren't there yet and they're not going with you. And so all of those things are a part of it. There's the anger of the change. Like I said, maybe you don't want this change. Maybe you're not choosing this change, but change comes whether we like it, whether we choose it, whether we embrace it. Change comes. It's incredible that way. But if we choose to take responsibility and journey through it, it can be different. But it is a part of this anger or bargaining that we sometimes we try to delay change, and we can be successful for a little while, but we become miserable as we bargain with ourselves or with other people and we make these little compromises, right? And we break our integrity because we don't like the idea of change or what that change would look like or mean or how we imagine it to be. There's isolation and loneliness through the change when nobody else is understanding the change, when nobody else can comprehend the change that you personally are going through. And so there's this loneliness. And I would also say this too. There is this idea that other people aren't aware of or a part of or have experienced the change. And you may be listening or watching today and saying, yeah, but Tom, you don't understand the change I've had to go through. You don't understand the change that I didn't choose for my life. Other people did. And maybe you're right, but I would say you're probably not the only one that's had to go through the change you're facing, you're dealing with. And no one can really do a comparison of change. You don't know what my change has cost me mentally and emotionally, whether it's significant or insignificant to you. And it can be some things like, I'm just changing where I bank or where I do business. If you've banked or done business somewhere for a long time and now you're changing that, there's emotions to that, right? Where I might laugh at that or brush that off and say that's insignificant. That change might be significant to you. It might be where your favorite restaurant is, because that's where you started dating your spouse. That's where you asked the question, popped the question and got engaged. But now your new favorite restaurant or your new favorite food has just changed because you've grown your new rhythm and routine, but other people aren't, right? And so this idea of isolation and loneliness is a part of the process of change. I got just a few minutes left, so I'll get you through this, right? Number 5, as we're going through the 7, it's the upward turn. As you start to see the results of change, you see that there's hope, there's possibility, there is a future with this change. And let me just tell you that if you're alive, you're listening, you're watching, you're a part of this podcast today, you have an incredible future. That the change you've gone through actually means there's more possible for you to experience, for you to understand. And I often ask people this question: when was the last time you did something for the first time? I know doing something for the first time is scary, it's frightening, it's terrifying, but it's exhilarating, it's life-giving, it's amazing, especially if you're doing it afraid, especially if you're doing it as a part of change. And so as you go through this season of change, there's that upward turn where you start to breathe again and you start to see things with a new lens, with some growth, embracing change. And then as a part of that, you start to reconstruct. You start to reconstruct your pattern of life, the pattern of your mindset. You start to reconstruct who you are because you've grown through this change. And so as a result of that, you become a new version of you. Now, here's the thing. When you stop living, when you truly stop living, it's not when you die, it's when you stop becoming a new version of yourself. That what you are today is not the finish line. You're not done yet. You're not through yet. And so there is a new version of you. And so now what you can do is use change as your construction season where you are building yourself. And you can let other people change you, or you can decide that you're going to be the change agent in your life, that you're going to take ownership, personal responsibility of that change so that you can reconstruct your identity. You can reconstruct who you are and what you are and the priorities of your life. Which brings us to the 7th and final stage or process of change is acceptance and hope. Accept that change is a reality. Accept that you are changing, you are growing, and it creates such a hopeful future for your life that you don't have to be stuck, that you don't have to be your future isn't determined by your past. Your future isn't determined by your upbringing. Your future isn't determined by the people around you. If you will embrace change in your life, get yourself in a new circle around people with a new frequency, embracing and owning and really constructing the change in your life. These are the 7 stages of grief and the 7 stages of change. I hope you have found that valuable. And I hope if I can give you an assignment, I hope you can identify what stage are you in? What stage of change are you in right now? And maybe you're going through multiple changes in multiple areas of your life, and you can go, oh, this change is here, that change is here, this is where this is at, this is where that's at, and you can identify it because identifying it really helps you to embrace it, lean into it, take responsibility, and then not be surprised by it, right? Because then you could go, oh, yes, this is where I'm at. I'm not going to let that control me. I'm going to control that. And so we embrace these. So I'm going to go over them one more time, all together with no more commentary. There's shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression or loneliness. There's the upward turn where we're looking forward to it. There's the reconstruction stage. And then there's the acceptance and hope. Today, I hope you found this valuable. I hope you can embrace the change in your life in this short little episode. It's not the longest one, but hopefully a very powerful one, speaking change into your life. This is the Cultivation Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Hamill. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out this week's episode. Be sure to hit the like button, as well as make your comments in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you and journey with you. Also, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on all the other incredible content we have coming at you.